The night sky above Earth was not normal. People across every continent stood outside, staring up. There were strange lights, bright silver points that did not move like stars and did not fall like meteors. They hung in the air, steady, glowing, as if they were watching. Then the world saw the truth. They were ships, enormous ships, larger than any city on Earth, floating high above the atmosphere. No one knew where they had come from. No one had seen them approach. It was as if they had appeared from nothing. For a long moment, the world was silent. People in New York, in Lagos, in Tokyo, in the deserts, on the oceans all frozen, their eyes locked on the sky. Then a voice came. It was not a human voice. It was deep, calm, and somehow inside everyone's mind at once. It spoke in every human language. We are the Galactic Protectorate. We are here to protect you. The words spread faster than light on the news. Reporters repeated them. Scientists tried to explain the impossible telepathic broadcast. Governments demanded answers. People asked the obvious question. Protect us from what? But the alien voice gave no reply. It was the same everywhere. We are here to protect you. Over and over until the message faded. Then the ships just stayed silent and still, like giant shadows above the earth in the streets of London. Captain Elias Ward of the United Earth Navy stood among the crowd. His sharp eyes never left the ships. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, guarded mining convoys near Jupiter, and served on the Mars Patrol for 3 years. He had seen a lot of strange things in his career, but this was different. The Protectorate's ships were not here to trade, not here to help, not even here to attack. They were here to wait. And Elias had learned long ago that when a military force waited, it was because something was coming. But what? There were no known alien enemies. Earth was not part of any galactic war. Humanity was still considered young by the galaxy's standards, new to space travel, still building colonies. Why would an alien power suddenly decide to guard it? And why did the alien captains, shown briefly in strange, blurred broadcasts, look nervous? Their movements were stiff, their eyes always scanning. They were like soldiers expecting an ambush. 3 days passed, and the ships remained. They positioned themselves above every continent, perfectly still, as if they were guarding against an invisible threat. The Protectorate imposed new rules. No human ship could leave Earth without their permission. Space stations in orbit were told to shut down certain systems. Cargo ships heading to Mars and the Moon were stopped and searched. When asked why, the alien officers only said it was for safety. Elias was not satisfied. Safety from what? He began asking questions, too. Other officers, many gave the same answer: orders were orders, and the aliens claimed they were allies. But one officer from the Luna Command whispered something strange to him. Satellite had gone offline the night before, and not because of a technical problem. The station logs had recorded an unidentified object near it just before the signal was lost. No one knew what it was. That night, Elias sat in a small apartment in the city, staring at the ceiling. The Protectorate's words kept echoing in his mind. We are here to protect you. But they never said from who. The thought bothered him more than he expected. If an enemy was real, why hide their name? Why keep the people in the dark? Unless the enemy wasn't coming from outside at all. The next morning, strange reports began to surface. People living near the equator claimed they had seen flashes of light in the upper atmosphere. Some said they saw dark, moving shapes high above shapes that didn't match the Protectorate's ships. The aliens denied everything. But Elias knew denial often meant there was something to hide. In a quiet meeting at the United Earth Navy headquarters, he was given new orders. He was to work with a Protectorate liaison officer, a tall, silver-skinned alien named Arthas. The job was to coordinate defense protocols. But as soon as the meeting ended, Elias asked Arthas directly, "You say you're here to protect us. From who?" The alien's golden eyes flickered for just a second before he answered, "It is better you do not know. Knowledge would bring fear, and fear would make you weak." Elias did not like that answer. He had been in enough battles to know that hiding information never made people stronger. As he left the room, He could feel the alien's gaze on him, cold and measuring. That evening, the streets were quieter than usual. People no longer gathered to watch the ships. They stayed indoors. The news spoke less about the arrival and more about new restrictions. Everyone was waiting for the next announcement from the Protectorate. Elias stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking up at the silent ships above. Somewhere deep inside, a sharp thought formed, one that refused to leave. Maybe the question was never who will protect us? Maybe it was who will protect us from them. The nights had grown uneasy. The glow of the Protectorate ships was always there, pale silver against the black sky. People had stopped pointing cameras at them. They no longer felt like wonders, they felt like watchtowers. Every evening, as darkness settled, strange events began to unfold. First, a weather satellite vanished. Then, to orbital communication. Stations went silent without warning. The Protectorate claimed it was nothing but technical failure. But Captain Elias Ward had been in the Navy long enough to know when someone was lying. 3 days later, a civilian cargo ship, the Solar Dawn, left Mars orbit carrying food and supplies for Earth. It never arrived. The Protectorate sent out a statement saying it had suffered a reactor malfunction. But before the broadcast ended, whispers spread from a private comms channel. Someone aboard another freighter had seen something, a shadow in space, moving unnaturally fast, almost invisible. Against the stars, it had glided toward the Solar Dawn, and then the ship's signal was gone. Elias could not ignore it. He requested access to Protectorate patrol records for that sector, but was politely refused. For security reasons, they said. That phrase had become their favorite answer. He began to suspect that the threat they claimed to be defending against might already be here, inside the very space they controlled. He found an unexpected ally in Dr. Leanne Voss, scientist specializing in deep space energy signatures. She was sharp, impatient, and not afraid to challenge the Protectorate's authority. She told Elias about readings her instruments had picked up bursts of exotic energy unlike anything in human databases. The strange part, she said, leaning closer, is that the readings come from inside the Protectorate fleet. Elias frowned. Inside their own ships? Yes, and not from their engines or weapons. These spikes, they're like something powering up and shutting down again, over and over, like something testing itself. The idea lodged in his mind like a thorn. If these energy bursts were coming from within the alien fleet, then maybe the danger wasn't outside at all. Maybe the Protectorate's ships weren't here to protect Earth from an enemy. They were here to keep something in. One night, while reviewing orbital surveillance images, Elias spotted something strange. In one image, a Protectorate battleship hung in low orbit above South America. The next image, taken only 2 seconds later, there was a dark, blurred shape near it, one that didn't match any known ship silhouette. By the third image, both the shape and a small human communications satellite were gone. The next morning, he confronted Arthas, his alien liaison officer. "What's out there?" Elias demanded. Arthas' expression remained calm, but his voice was firmer than before. "Captain Ward, you would do well not to see danger where there is none." "That's easy to say when you're not the one watching." "Ships disappear," Elias shot back. "You are alive because we are here," Arthas replied. "Trust in that." And then, without another word, the alien walked away. Later that evening, Dr. Voss called him in a hushed voice. "You need to see this," she said. In her lab, she replayed a transmission intercepted from an unlisted Protectorate channel. The voice was speaking in a harsh, fast language Elias didn't understand. But the translation software caught enough to make his blood run cold. "Containment breach. Approaching low orbit. Orders to intercept immediately." Elias stared at the readout. "Containment? Breach of what?" Dr. Voss shook her head slowly. "I don't think they came here to protect us from an enemy out. Their captain, I think whatever they're afraid of, is already here." Outside, high above the clouds, the silent silver ships kept their positions, watching, waiting, and somewhere between them and the surface of Earth, a shadow moved unseen. The attack came without warning. It began with Europa Station, the largest human settlement on Jupiter's icy moon. One moment it was sending its regular mining reports. The next, every channel went dead. At first, Earth thought it was a power outage or a communications relay failure. But when the rescue team arrived, they found the station eerily silent. The air was still warm, the lights still flickered in the corridors. Meals sat half-eaten on tables, but there wasn't a single person anywhere. Not one body, not one trace of a struggle except for strange marks on the walls, like deep scratches made by something with steel claws. When the news reached Earth, the Protectorate finally spoke. The alien voice returned to every human mind. At once, the hunters have come. No more, no less. They offered no explanation of what the hunters were or where they came from, only that Earth must follow their rules even more strictly if it wished to survive. Captain Elias Ward didn't buy it. He requested access to the rescue team's camera footage, and after hours of quiet pushing, bribing, and calling in old favors, he got it. The footage made his skin crawl. In the grainy images, he saw the station's crew running in panic. Behind them, dark figures moved quickly, too quickly. Their movements were sharp, almost inhuman. But when the camera caught their faces in brief flashes, Elias froze. They were human, pale, expressionless, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. He showed the footage to Dr. Leanne Voss. She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Those aren't aliens, Elias. They're enhanced. Genetically or mechanically, it's hard to tell, but they're human. Or they used to be." That single thought kept replaying in his mind. If the hunters were human, then where had they come from? The Protectorate had told humanity for decades that no human colonies existed beyond those officially recorded. But what if that wasn't true? What if there had been other settlements, ones the Protectorate didn't want Earth to know about? Over the next week, strange reports began pouring in from across the solar system. A research post on Titan lost all contact. A small convoy of civilian ships went missing in the asteroid belt. Each time, the Protectorate arrived first. Each time, the story was the same hunters. No survivors, no bodies, just emptiness and the faint signs of violence. Elias began digging deeper. The more he searched, the more it seemed like the hunters were not an outside threat at all. They moved with military precision, used weapons far too similar to human designs, and seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause the most chaos. It felt less like a war with a foreign enemy and more like a targeted purge. Dr. Voss soon brought him another piece of the puzzle data from the energy readings she'd been tracking. "The bursts I told you about before? They've increased," she said, showing him the graph. And every spike lines up with a hunter attack, which means they're coming from the Protectorate ships, Elias finished, his voice tight. The idea was so dangerous that neither of them said it aloud for several seconds. If the readings were right, then the hunters weren't just humans who'd gone rogue somewhere in the galaxy. They were being launched, armed, and guided by the very fleet that claimed to be Earth's guardian. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He sat on his balcony again, staring at the pale lights of the alien ships above, somewhere up there. In one of those silent giants, the hunters were waiting. It's not aliens from a distant star. It's not monsters born from nature's mistakes. It's but humans changed, controlled, and sent to erase their own kind. And if the Protectorate truly made them, then maybe Earth wasn't the one being protected. Maybe Earth was the one being prepared. Rain pattered softly against the glass as Elias stared at the encrypted file. Dr. Voss had just sent him. The data had been pulled from deep inside the Protectorate's private communication network, something almost impossible to access without being noticed. Voss had done it anyway, working in silence through the night, every keystroke a risk of being traced. Now the truth was blinking on his screen, and it was worse than anything he had imagined. The hunters were not an ancient enemy. They weren't survivors of a lost human colony. They were a creation engineered by the Protectorate itself. The files were cold, clinical. Subject generation, alpha human origin, one report read. Augmentation protocol successful. Cognitive loyalty conditioning, at 94% efficiency. The words struck like a blow. The hunters had been bred, altered, and trained for one purpose: to eliminate Earth if it became too strong. Too independent, every mission record in the files pointed to one conclusion. The Protectorate had never come to guard humanity from an outside threat. They had come to contain it. For decades, they had watched Earth grow, colonize, and advance. And when human technology began to evolve faster than expected, they had decided to keep a weapon in reserve. The hunters were that weapon. Elias sat back in his chair, his mind racing. They hadn't just lied. They had shaped the entire situation from the start. The restrictions, the curfews, the disarmament orders. It had all been about making Earth weaker. When the hunters arrived, he felt a tight knot in his stomach as he realized the next phase was already in motion. He met Voss in a dimly lit storage bay under the Navy's central complex. The hum of distant machinery filled the silence. Between them, she was pale, exhausted, but her eyes burned with the same resolve as his. "We can't keep this quiet," she said. "People have to know." Elias hesitated. "If we broadcast this, the Protectorate will move fast. They'll lock down every city, seize every channel, maybe even strike before we can organize a defense. Then we make sure the truth spreads faster than they can stop it," Voss replied. They worked together through the night, encrypting the data so it could be sent in bursts across hundreds of civilian and military comms channels. When the first transmission went out, it spread like wildfire. News anchors read classified words on live broadcasts. Civilians posted the files to every network they could reach. The message was simple: the hunters are ours. The Protectorate made them, and they are here to destroy us. The world's reaction was instant. Panic rolled through cities. In some places, riots broke out as people demanded answers from the alien overseers above. In others, human defense groups began moving hidden weapons and old warships into position, preparing for the worst. The Protectorate's response came within hours. Their ships shifted into a tighter formation above Earth. The pale silver glow that had once looked peaceful now pulsed with a faint red warning. The voice returned to humanity's minds, colder than before. "This is your final warning. Your fleets, stand down. Cooperation will ensure survival." But Elias knew survival on their terms wasn't survival at all. It was submission. As he stood with Voss on the balcony of the Navy command tower, he watched streaks of light rise from hidden launch bays across the planet. Earth's secret defense fleet, long kept quiet under the oceans and inside hollowed asteroids, was waking up. The question now wasn't whether they would fight, it was whether they could win before the hunters were unleashed in full force. The sky above was no longer still. The waiting was over. The message from the Protectorate came at dawn, carried into every mind on Earth like a knife through silence. "You have 1 hour to surrender. If you refuse, the hunters will be deployed in full strength." The voice was flat, without threat or anger, just cold certainty, like they had already decided the outcome. In the command center, Captain Elias Ward stood before the tactical display. Red dots marked every Protectorate warship in orbit. They were too many, too close, and every one of them could destroy a city in seconds. Across the table, Dr. Leon Voss was typing furiously, sending final encrypted instructions to hidden human defense units. Outside the reinforced windows, the morning sky was unnaturally bright, the reflection of alien ships glinting in the upper atmosphere. Elias opened the comms line directly to the Protectorate flagship. "You promised to protect Earth," he said, his voice steady. "We just asked from who? Now we know. From you." Then he cut the channel before they could respond. Beneath the oceans, massive shadows began to move. Hidden for decades, the Leviathan-class warships of Earth's deep-water fleet rose from their silos, their hulls dripping as they breached the surface. From the asteroid belt, long-range missile platforms powered up, their camouflage fields collapsing as they prepared to fire. And in the black void beyond Luna, a squadron of stealth carriers emerged from the dark side of the moon, releasing waves of fighters into the open. The Protectorate moved instantly. Their ships broke formation, weapons glowing with deadly light. In the first exchange, beams of energy cut across the sky, striking both human and alien vessels. The air above major cities trembled as shockwaves rolled through the atmosphere. Then the hunters came. Thousands of drop pods streaked toward Earth like burning meteors. Inside, the enhanced soldiers waited, their faces blank, their eyes glowing with programmed obedience. But something had changed. The data Elias and Voss had spread hadn't just reached civilians, it had reached the hunters themselves. Among them, a spark of doubt began to grow. When the first pods crashed into the fields outside Madrid, some hunters attacked as planned. Others hesitated. And in the chaos, a few turned their weapons not on humans, but on the Protectorate drones that accompanied them. The battlefield fractured. Confusion spread through the alien command. Elias saw the opening. "All fleets, push now," he ordered. The human warships surged forward, unleashing everything they had. Missiles tore through the hulls of alien cruisers, railguns punched holes in battleships that had once been thought indestructible. Above the Pacific, a Leviathan-class vessel rammed a Protectorate carrier head-on, tearing both ships apart in a blinding explosion. The fight was brutal and costly. Entire cities shook from the impacts of falling debris. But with every passing minute, the Protectorate lost ground. Their fleets were designed for control, not for a desperate defense against a united, furious enemy. And now, some of their deadliest soldiers, the hunters, were rebelling mid-battle. When the alien flagship finally broke formation and began its retreat, a wave of relief swept through the human forces. One by one, the Protectorate ships jumped out of the system, their silver glow vanishing into the black. In the silence that followed, the world counted its dead. Earth had survived, but the scars would last for generations. On the balcony of the battered command tower, Elias watched the smoke drift across the city. "They thought we were prey," he murmured. "Now they know better." Above, the sky was empty again. But every human knew the galaxy had been watching. And somewhere out there, in the deep cold between the stars, the Protectorate would be remembering this day the day. Their promise to protect was answered with fire.